The ocean. It covers more than 70% of our planet. We call it the last true frontier. But it is also the world's largest graveyard. Down here, in the eternal darkness, thousands of meters below the sunlit world, lie secrets. The pressure is incomprehensible, capable of crushing military-grade steel as if it were a soda can. It is a realm more hostile to human life than outer space. And it is here that the ghosts of the Cold War wait. Between 1963 and 1968, the world's superpowers were locked in a silent, suffocating underwater war. Nuclear-armed submarines prowled the depths, acting as the ultimate deterrent, a hidden promise of total annihilation. They were the most complex, most expensive, and most dangerous machines ever built. But sometimes, they simply vanished. These weren't just accidents. These were mysteries that triggered international crises, launched billion-dollar Black Ops recovery missions, and created decades of questions, cover-ups, and conspiracies. Tonight, we are not just looking at equipment failures. We are diving deep into 5 declassified submarine disasters the Pentagon and its rivals still, to this day, cannot fully explain. 5 stories, hundreds of lives lost, and secrets that were meant to stay buried forever. May 1968. The Cold War is at its zenith. The world is holding its breath. In the North Atlantic, the USS Scorpion, a nuclear-powered attack submarine, is heading home to Norfolk, Virginia. She carries a crew of 99 men. On May 21st, Commander Francis Slattery sends a routine radio message. He estimates his arrival on May 27th. The message is normal. The sub is operational. And then, silence. May 27th comes and goes. The Scorpion does not arrive. At first, the Navy isn't worried. Submarines often maintain radio silence. But as the 28th turns to the 29th, a quiet unease at Naval Station Norfolk turns into a cold, sickening dread. The U.S. Navy quietly designates the Scorpion as overdue, presumed lost. A search begins. It is one of the largest in history. Dozens of ships, aircraft, and other submarines scour the Atlantic. They find nothing. No oil slick, no debris field, no emergency buoys. 99 men and a 250-foot nuclear submarine have vanished. The Navy's only clue is a cryptic one, the SOSUS network, a top-secret underwater web of microphones designed to track Soviet subs, had picked up something on May 22nd. Not one, but a series of 15 acoustic events spread over 3 minutes. The sounds are recorded near the Azores. Analysis is difficult, but the timeline matches. 5 months later, the Navy's deep-sea research ship, the Mizar, finally locates the wreckage. 400 miles southwest of the Azores, resting on the ocean floor at a depth of 10,000 feet. The evidence is horrifying. The submarine is broken. The stern is ripped clean off, rotated 180 degrees. The operations compartment has imploded. The sail is detached and mangled. The Navy convenes a court of inquiry. Their official conclusion, it is perhaps the most unsettling answer of all. They cannot be certain. The leading theory is a hot-run torpedo. The theory goes like this. A Mark 37 torpedo, one of the 23 weapons in Scorpion's belly, accidentally activates inside its tube. Its battery overheats, and with no water to cool it, it cooks off, igniting the 330-pound warhead. The explosion breaches the hull. In seconds, the Scorpion is fatally wounded, plummeting past its crush depth, where the sea pressure finishes the job in a catastrophic implosion. It's a plausible theory, but it's riddled with problems. The torpedoes were known to have faulty batteries. In fact, Commander Slattery himself had reported issues with them. But would an explosion from a single torpedo be powerful enough to rip the entire stern section from the ship? The acoustic data doesn't perfectly match a torpedo explosion. Some experts believe the sounds are more consistent with the ship breaking up under pressure first. And then, there is the Soviet theory. In 1968, naval tensions were at a breaking point. Just months earlier, the USS Porbola, a Navy intelligence ship, had been captured by North Korea. Some in the Pentagon believed the Soviets were involved. Was the Scorpion sinking an act of war, a retaliation? The location of the sinking is suspicious. It's near a known choke point for Soviet submarine activity. Commander Slattery, on his way home, had reportedly been diverted to observe a Soviet task force in the area. Did the Soviets get to him first? Declassified reports show that the Navy aggressively investigated this. They tracked every Soviet sub and surface ship in the Atlantic. Their official conclusion was that no Soviet vessel was in a position to have attacked the Scorpion. But that answer has never satisfied the families of the 99 men who died. For decades, they, along with independent researchers, have pointed to a cover-up. They cite the ship's notoriously poor condition. The Scorpion was overdue for a major overhaul. It was plagued by system failures. It had unresolved safety issues. Was it a faulty torpedo? Was it a Soviet attack? Or did the ship, pushed too hard and maintained too little, simply fail? The U.S. Navy has revisited the evidence multiple times, in 1970, 1987, and again in 1993. Their conclusion remains the same. The cause of the USS Scorpion's loss cannot be definitively established. The 99 men are on eternal patrol. Their nuclear reactor and 2 nuclear-tipped torpedoes are still down there, 10,000 feet below the waves. A silent, radioactive tomb, and a mystery the U.S. Navy cannot explain. The same year the Scorpion vanished, 1968, another submarine on the other side of the world also disappeared. This was hull number 574, the Soviet Gulf II class ballistic missile submarine K-129. In February 1968, K-129 sailed from its base in Kamchatka, carrying 98 crewmen and, more importantly, 3 R-21 nuclear missiles. Each missile carried a 1 megaton warhead, 70 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Its patrol was routine, until it wasn't. On March 8th, the K-129 missed 2 consecutive radio check-ins. The Soviet Pacific Fleet went on high alert. A massive search and rescue operation was launched, the largest in Soviet naval history. They searched for weeks. Like the Americans searching for the Scorpion, they found nothing. The Soviets eventually concluded the sub was lost. They held memorial services for the 98 men and moved on. But the Americans did not move on, because the U.S. Navy knew exactly where the K-129 was. Just like the Americans, the Soviets had their own underwater listening network. But the American SOSUS system was far superior, and it had recorded the entire event. On March 8, 1968, multiple U.S. listening posts picked up a terrifying series of sounds from the middle of the North Pacific, A dull explosion, the sickening groan of a collapsing hull, and then silence. Using the data, the Navy triangulated the K-129's final resting place to a small search area 1,500 miles northwest of Hawaii. The depth was 16,500 feet, 3 miles down. In Washington, D.C., a light bulb went off. This was the intelligence opportunity of a lifetime. If they could recover the K-129, they could get their hands on Soviet nuclear warheads. They could analyze their missile technology. And perhaps most valuable of all, they could recover the code books and crypto machines, giving them a direct window into secret Soviet communications. There was just one problem. How do you possibly lift a 2,000-ton radiation-filled submarine from a depth of 3 miles right under the noses of the Soviet Union? The answer was one of the most audacious, expensive, and secretive intelligence operations in history. It was called Project Azorian. The CIA couldn't just send a Navy salvage ship. The Soviets would know immediately. They needed a cover story. So they built one. A very, very expensive one. They reached out to the world's most eccentric and reclusive billionaire, Howard Hughes. The plan? Hughes would announce that his company was building a revolutionary deep-sea mining vessel, the Hughes Glomar Explorer, to harvest manganese nodules from the ocean floor. It was the perfect cover. It explained the massive ship, the strange derrick, and the giant claw-like contraption it would need to lower to the seafloor. This claw, known as Clementine, was a 6,000-ton, 8-fingered capture vehicle designed to grab the submarine and lift it into a massive hidden bay inside the Glomar Explorer, a moon pool, shielding it from spy satellites. The total cost, over $800 million in 1974. That's nearly $5 billion today, all to steal one submarine. In the summer of 1974, 6 years after the K-129 sank, the Glomar Explorer arrived at the recovery site. It was not alone. Soviet ships, including a missile tracking vessel, were watching. They were suspicious of this mining operation. They sailed close, hailing the American ship, asking what they were doing. The crew of the Glomar, playing their part, told them they were mining. The Soviets watched and waited. The Glomar's crew began the most difficult salvage operation ever attempted. They lowered Clementine on a 3-mile-long steel pipe string. It was, as one engineer put it, like trying to pick up a single strand of spaghetti from the bottom of the Empire State Building using another single strand of spaghetti. It took days, but they did it. The claw locked on to the K-129. The winches engaged. The slow 3-mile ascent began. And then, disaster. Partway up, a catastrophic failure. Several of the claw's tines broke. The K-129, already fragile, snapped in two. The main section, holding the missiles, the code room, and the conning tower, broke away and fell all the way back down to the ocean floor. All the Glomar Explorer recovered was the forward 38-foot section. It was a devastating failure. Or was it? The CIA did recover the bodies of 6 Soviet submariners, who were later given a full military burial at sea, filmed by the CIA and delivered to the Russians decades later. They also recovered 2 nuclear-tipped torpedoes, but the grand prize, the code room, the missiles, was lost. For years, that was the official story. The operation was a partial and very expensive failure. But that brings us to the central mystery, the part the government still won't explain. First, what sank the K-129? The Soviets believed it collided with an American submarine, the USS Swordfish, which was operating in the area and returned to port with a bent periscope. The U.S. Navy has always vehemently denied this. The more likely cause, which the SOSUS data supports, was a catastrophic internal explosion, leaking hydrogen from the batteries, or a volatile reaction from the liquid-fueled missiles. We don't know for sure, but the real question is, did Project Azorian really fail? For decades, investigative journalists have argued that the Broken Claw story was itself a cover story, a limited hangout to convince the Soviets that the mission failed, so they wouldn't know their codes were compromised. Think about it. The CIA spent $800 million. They built the most advanced salvage vessel on Earth. Is it plausible that its multi-million-dollar precision-engineered claw just broke? Or is it more likely that the CIA did recover the code room? That for the remainder of the Cold War, the U.S. had a direct line into Soviet naval intelligence? The CIA, to this day, will not declassify the full details. The files on what exactly was recovered by the Glomar Explorer remain sealed. The K-129 is more than a mystery. It is a secret, wrapped in a cover story, hidden inside a $5 billion enigma, lying 3 miles down at the bottom of the Pacific. 1968. It is, without a doubt, the single deadliest year in submarine history. In January, the INS Dakar vanishes. In March, the K-129. In May, the USS Scorpion. And caught between them, also in January, the French submarine Minerve. She was a pride of the French Navy, a Daphne-class diesel-electric submarine, state-of-the-art for her time. On January 27, 1968, the Minerve was conducting a simple training exercise with a military aircraft just 30 miles south of her home port of Toulon on the sunny French Riviera. Her last communication was at 7:55 a.m. She radioed that she would be at her snorkel depth in about an hour. She was never heard from again. 52 men were on board, including her commander, Lieutenant André Fauvet. The weather was terrible. A powerful mistral wind was churning the Mediterranean. But the Minerve was a submarine. She was designed to be beneath the weather. When she failed to return to port, a massive search was launched. The French were joined by the Americans, including the same deep-sea research ship that would later find the Scorpion. They searched for days. They found nothing. For the 52 families, it was the beginning of an agonizing mystery that would last for more than half a century. What happened to the Minerve? The theories were rampant. Did she collide with another ship in the storm? Did her snorkel, the breathing tube she uses to run her diesel engines, fail and flood the boat? Was she, like the Scorpion, sunk by a faulty torpedo? Or, like the K-129, was there another, darker player involved? The French government, humiliated by the loss, quietly closed the case. The 52 men were declared lost at sea. The mystery endured. For 51 years, the families of the Minerve's crew petitioned the French government. Find our fathers, they said. Find our husbands. For 51 years, they were told it was impossible. The technology didn't exist. The location was unknown. Then, in 2018, the families, led by the son of the Minerve's commander, finally convinced the French government to try one last time. They hired a private American company called Ocean Infinity, the same team that had famously and unsuccessfully searched for missing flight MH370. The company brought their ship, the Seabed Constructor. It wasn't just a ship, it was a high-tech mothership for a fleet of autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs. These AUVs, equipped with the world's most advanced high-resolution sonar, could scan vast swaths of the seabed at depths the 1968 searchers could only dream of. In July 2019, after meticulously reanalyzing the original 1968 seismic data, the team narrowed the search area. On July 21st, 2019, they found her. The images were heartbreaking and definitive. There she was, 15,000 feet down. The name Minerve clearly visible, stenciled on the hull. The mystery of where she was solved, but the discovery only deepened the central question: why? The sonar images show the Minerve is broken into 3 main pieces, scattered over 1,000 feet of seabed. This confirmed the 1968 data. The submarine didn't just flood, it didn't just sink, it suffered a violent, catastrophic implosion. The new evidence points to one of the original theories, a failure of the snorkel, or the rudder. Imagine this. The Minerve is snorkeling in heavy seas. A large wave crashes over the snorkel mast, and the head valve, which is supposed to slam shut, fails. Water pours into the submarine. Or, even more likely, a failure of the aft hydroplanes, the wings that control its depth. They suddenly jam in a dive position. The submarine, already deep, is pulled down, fast. The crew in the control room would have seen the depth gauges spinning. They would have heard the alarms. They would have felt the sickening, unstoppable descent. They would have had, perhaps, 1 minute. Once it passed its crush depth, around 1,000 feet, it was over. The sea pressure at 600 pounds per square inch instantly imploded the hull. The French government declared the case closed. It was a tragic accident. But accident is not an explanation. Why did the rudder fail? Why did the snorkel fail? Was it poor maintenance? Was it a design flaw in the Daphne-class subs? The government has never released a final definitive report on the cause of the failure. The wreckage is too deep to recover. The questions of the 51-year-old mystery remain on the ocean floor. The 52 families finally have a gravesite to mourn, but they still don't have the full explanation.
Our next mystery begins not in 1968, but in the final days of World War II. The HMS Totem was a British T-class submarine. She was a workhorse. After the war, she, along with 2 of her sister ships, was sold to a new emerging naval power in the Mediterranean, Israel. In 1967, the Totem was renamed the INS Dakar, the Hebrew word for grouper. She and her 69-man crew, led by Commander Yaakov Ra'anan, trained in Britain for months. In January 1968, that same fatal month, the Dakar set sail for her new home in Haifa, Israel. It was a journey she would never complete. The Dakar passed through the Strait of Gibraltar. She snorkeled across the Mediterranean, sending regular position reports. On January 24th, Commander Ra'anan sent a message as he passed the island of Crete. He gave his position, speed, and reported all was well. He expected to arrive in Haifa in 2 days. Just after midnight, on January 25th, the Dakar sent its last ever transmission. Just a string of dots, a simple check-in. And then like the Scorpion, like the K-129, like the Minerve, she vanished. In Israel, the disappearance of the Dakar was not just a military accident. It was a searing national tragedy. The entire country had been waiting to welcome this new symbol of their naval strength. Instead, the docks in Haifa became a place of mourning. An international search began, but the Mediterranean is deep. They found nothing. The mystery was agonizing. What could have happened? The most prominent theory, one that took root in the Israeli public consciousness, was an attack. The Dakar had vanished in hostile waters. Egypt was the prime suspect. Had an Egyptian warship or another submarine sunk the Dakar in a surprise attack? The Egyptian government, in fact, claimed they had sunk it. Their newspapers ran triumphant headlines, but they provided no proof, no sonar data, no wreckage. The US and British intelligence agencies, listening in, heard no evidence of a naval battle. The theory was eventually dismissed. So, what else? A collision? A catastrophic technical failure? For 31 years, there were no answers. The search for the Dakar became a national obsession. The Israel Navy never gave up, launching more than 25 separate expeditions over 3 decades. Finally, in 1999, a joint U.S.-Israeli team, using new sonar technology and reanalyzed data, found her. The discovery was shocking for what it didn't show. The Dakar was resting on the seabed at a depth of 9,800 feet between Crete and Cyprus, almost exactly on her original planned route. And she was in one piece. This was not the Scorpion ripped apart. This was not the Minerve shattered into fragments. The Dakar's hull was almost entirely intact. It was sitting upright on the ocean floor. Her conning tower was sheared off, likely from the impact with the seabed, but the hull itself was not breached. This single piece of evidence ruled out almost every theory. It was not an external torpedo or mine that would have left a massive hole. It was not a catastrophic internal explosion that would have blown the hull apart. It was not a catastrophic implosion from sinking too deep because the hull was intact. So what in the world happened? The evidence of the intact hull sitting on the bottom points to a mystery that is somehow more baffling. It means the Dakar flooded. But how? A major pipe rupture? A failed torpedo tube hatch? The new leading theory is a collision, not with another ship, but with a massive uncharted seamount, a mountain rising from the ocean floor. But the area was thought to be well charted. The most likely and most chilling theory is a sudden, uncontrollable loss of depth control. Perhaps like the Minerve, her hydroplanes failed. But instead of a violent dive, it was a slow, steady descent. The crew would have been fighting it the entire way down. Full ballast blow, engines full astern, angling the sub upwards. But it wasn't enough. She slipped below her crush depth slowly. The hull didn't implode violently. It failed. Water began pouring in from seams, hatches, and seals. The submarine, now impossibly heavy, lost its fight and began its final 2-mile fall to the bottom. It is a terrifying, heartbreaking scenario, but it is and remains a theory. The Israeli government cannot and will not give a definitive explanation. The Dakar's 69 crewmen are entombed in a silent grave, a ghost ship that for some unexplained reason did not implode.
Our final mystery is perhaps the most unsettling of all, because this time the U.S. Navy knows what happened. The mystery isn't what. The mystery is why they covered it up for 60 years. This is the story of the USS Thresher. April 10th, 1963. The Thresher is the most advanced submarine in the world. She is the lead ship of her class, a nuclear-powered hunter-killer designed to find and destroy Soviet subs. She is the future. On this day, she is 220 miles east of Cape Cod, conducting deep dive tests. She is accompanied by a surface rescue ship, the USS Skylark. 129 men are on board, 112 crew, and 17 civilian contractors. The Thresher communicates with the Skylark via an underwater telephone, a primitive acoustic texting system. At 7:47 a.m., Thresher begins her descent. At 8:35 a.m., she reports approaching test depth. At 9:13 a.m., a garbled message arrives at the Skylark. The operator can just make it out. Experiencing minor difficulties. Have positive up angle. Attempting to blow. This means they're trying to surface. Then, silence. The Skylark operator, tense, listens. And then, he hears it. A sound like a ship breaking up, like it's going through a grinder. The Thresher and all 129 men were gone. It was the deadliest submarine disaster in history. The nation was in shock. President Kennedy ordered flags flown at half-staff. The Navy immediately convened a court of inquiry. The wreckage was found a month later, 8,400 feet down. The photos were horrific. The Thresher had been utterly destroyed. The hull was in 6 main pieces. It had not just imploded, it had been obliterated. The Navy's official conclusion, released in 1964, was swift and specific. A silver-brazed pipe joint in a seawater system had failed. A high-pressure spray of water blasted into the engine room, shorting out vital electrical panels. The nuclear reactor scrammed. It shut itself down. The Thresher was dead in the water, a 3,700-ton steel coffin. With no propulsion, and now weighing hundreds of tons more from the flooding, she began to sink. The crew tried to blow ballast, using high-pressure air to empty the ballast tanks, but the system failed. Ice formed in the pipes, a known design flaw, blocking the air. She sank past her crush depth, and she was gone. This is the story the Navy told for 57 years. A tragic, unavoidable accident. And it was a lie. Not a total lie. The pipe did fail, but the reason was not a mystery. It was negligence. For decades, a retired Navy captain named James Bryant, who had commanded a sister ship of the Thresher, fought the Navy to declassify the full 1,700-page inquiry. He knew the official story was sanitized. In 2020, he won. A federal judge ordered the Navy to release the documents. And the truth is damning. The declassified testimony shows the Thresher was a rush job. The Navy was in a desperate race with the Soviets. They cut corners. Hundreds of silver-brazed pipe joints were never properly inspected with ultrasound. The shipyard faked the inspection reports. The Navy knew about the faulty joints, and they did nothing. The testimony also shows the ballast blow system had failed repeatedly in tests. The Navy knew it iced up, and they did nothing. The minor difficulty reported by the Thresher was a lie to calm the surface ship. In reality, the engine room was filling with a blinding, atomized spray of freezing water. Men were trying to stop a leak that was gushing with the force of a fire hose that could cut a man in half. The reactor shutdown wasn't just an accident. It was a result of the Navy prioritizing speed over safety. The loss of the Thresher was not a mystery. It was an inevitability. The Navy created the SubSafe program after the disaster, ensuring this would never happen again. And it hasn't. But the unexplained part of this disaster is not the why. It's the deception. Why did the Pentagon and the U.S. Navy fight for 57 years to hide the truth? To protect the reputations of admirals? To hide the gross negligence of the shipyard? The 129 men on the Thresher weren't just victims of the ocean. They were victims of a system that valued speed over human life. That is the final, terrifying explanation.
5 ships, 5 tragedies, from the deep Atlantic to the Pacific, from the Mediterranean to the coast of New England. The USS Thresher, a story of negligence hidden for half a century. The INS Dakar, a silent ship that refused to implode, leaving a baffling riddle. The Minerve, a 51-year search that answered where, but not why. The K-129, a tomb so valuable it launched a billion-dollar conspiracy. The USS Scorpion, a ghost ship whose final moments remain a state secret. These ships and the hundreds of men entombed within them are more than just historical footnotes. They are reminders. Reminders that the Cold War was not cold for those who fought it in the deep. Reminders that the ocean is a force more powerful than any machine we can build. And a reminder that governments keep secrets. Down in the crushing dark, the pressure, the cold, and the silence guard these mysteries. The ocean keeps its secrets well, and the full truth of what happened in the deep may be one of those secrets it never gives back.